Welcome back, folks. Well, we have just had another turn in the Pete Alonso saga. And you know what? I'm not surprised. Another day, another day. Well, this is something that, you kind of see. You've seen in the last couple of years, maybe not so much in baseball, but when a superstar wants another player, most often a team responds. So it looks like Francisco Lindor has gone to back for Pete Alonso to be a New York Met. Will the New York Mets respond in kind? Obviously, we're a couple days past those words by Steve Cohen on Amazing's Day, and I like that day. Where the fans supposedly booed the idea of Pete Alonso potentially not coming back to the Mets, and more specifically, they were booing the idea of a backup plan being the kids. Who's to blame those fans? Because this year we got Juan Soto. You want to trust David Stern, but also you want the Mets to be in the best position when the 2025 season starts. And that would be having a veteran with experience and a veteran who has that, let's just say, pedigree. In the past, obviously Alonso had that magical moment in the playoffs, but we know there is more there. We know there's more there. Yes, he is aging, but if you compare what's out there, and here's the deal. All right, before we get into it, let's start off the channel. Let's start off this video right. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. And, I want to start off again by thanking everybody in the past couple of videos. We've done a great job. I would say past 50, 60 videos. I got to say we took it to the next level. That is because of you. Let's continue to grow as a channel. We're going to hit new marks together, new heights, and I cannot wait for the opening day. I cannot wait to start analyzing some real games together. That is going to be fun, folks. That is going to be fun. And we got Mr. Juan Soto and company to analyze. So, folks, stick around. We're going to have a lot of fun here on Dominant Mets Nation together. And in that same token, at the end of this video, I'm going to analyze some of the best comments that we had on our last video. So I'm going to try to choose every video, 2 or 3 comments, and I'm going to respond in kind. So keep those comments coming. All right, so we're going to try that at the end of this video. All right, but again, the Mets have supposedly re-engaged with Pete Alonso, and Francisco Lindor wants to keep him on the team. So reportedly, the Mets re-engaged with Pete Alonso, and Francisco Lindor told management he wants them to keep the first baseman, as per Pat Ragazzo of Sports Illustrated. And Pat, I gotta say, has been doing a phenomenal job, especially in the last couple of weeks when there has been so much uncertainty. Pat reporting the twists and the turns where the Mets may go, Spencer Torkelson, Ryan Mountcastle, and really the list goes on. And Pat's been doing a great job. So, he's got his pulse on this situation. So again, the new news comes out. Pat Ragazzo gives us that information. All right, so Saturday's war of words looked messy, folks, right? It looked messy from an outside perspective, but actually it might result in some progress. And this is what I said. I said this is the first time Steve Cohen probably got a chance to express his feelings where the polar bear can hear. I said this whole negotiation, most of the negotiation was probably engaged by Boras and Stern, and probably every time Pete heard something he didn't like, he'd say, what does Steve Cohen think? What does Steve Cohen think? I think this is the first reality check. The first reality check from the polar bear that the boss, Steve Cohen, is not happy. And if and this is what I was contemplating, if Pete Alonso truly wanted to go back to the Mets, why would you irk and anger the guy that has the ability to sign you? I mean, it just makes no sense. It makes no sense. So this information coming out, is not so surprising. So, following the New York Mets, owner Steve Cohen told the fan base at a Masons Day that he is not happy with negotiations or what has been presented to them, along with the rebuttal from Scott Boras. There is now a new development in the Pete Alonso free agency saga. According to John Heyman of the New York Post, on Tuesday night, Cohen and the Mets re-engaged with Alonso's camp no more than 48 hours following Cohen's public comments at Citi Field. Heyman made a very logical case that covered both sides. All right, in quote, truly it's hard to know what to make of the ongoing saga involving the National League's top home run hitter since he came into the league, and one of the most prolific in history of the franchise, Heyman wrote. But from my drama-free distance, it feels like Alonso desperately hopes to return, while the Mets could go either way. Honestly, that is significant. First of all, you see Heyman gassing up Alonso, one of the most prolific top home run hitters, and rightfully so. But to introduce him in like that, I don't know. You've heard things about Heyman being connected to Boras, but then, now you kind of hear where we are right now. At this point, you heard Steve Cohen was frustrated. You hear reality setting in where the Mets could legitly pivot to a Mountcastle, where they could legitly pivot to a Torkelson. And if that would happen, the career of the possibility written on the wall of Alonso coming back would be over. And not only that, the market, the little tiny market that Alonso have, would shrivel up even further. So even though the contract right now is 3 years, $70 million, who knows if, let's say, the Angels are the only team left, or Toronto is the only team left. And if you're Pete Alonso, where you need to have that one special year, Queens makes all the sense in the world. And if you're looking to win, why would you want to go to the Angels? Why would you want to go to the Toronto Blue Jays? Both those teams have proven that winning is not for them, at least right now. So we hear Alonso desperately hopes to return to the Mets, and the Mets, they're business as usual. You give them credit for that regard. If they end up pulling this off, and if they do, they're going to get Alonso at a very hefty discount. They're not going to have to pay that 7-8 year, $160 million contract. It looks like they're going to secure the services of Alonso for well less than $100 million. So whether you like Stearns, whether you don't like Stearns, it looks like you could get Alonso, but you'll get him at a huge discount. And I know there'll be those Pete Alonso fans that'll be like, you give him everything. Soto got $800 million. Soto's greedy. Well, folks, I agree. A lot of these players are greedy. Soto, $800 million. Nobody's worth $800 million. But the market spoke in the case of Juan Soto, where you had 5 teams at or around $700+ million. So it warranted the Mets paying up. Plus, on the back end, the Mets will see a profit, or not a profit, but they will see an increase in revenue because of Mr. Juan Soto. Pete Alonso, despite being that prolific home run hitter, does not generate that same revenue. Case in point, last year the Mets, the Mets weren't profitable. I believe that operating income was minus a couple $100 million. So the Mets have to turn this around in a big way. They have to be a perennial winner, but they have to also turn this into a profit. Hence, any move they make that isn't that legit superstar, that will not make you come out to the ballpark, will not impact ticket gate sales, you have to treat very differently. And Pete Alonso, even though he's an homegrown player, is one of those players that you have to treat differently. Okay, so the all or nothing Alonso has compromised to where he's offering a 3-year bridge contract with opt-outs, of course. In effect, conceding all important term. So he's conceding that long-term contract. It's fair to say that the Mets have already won the negotiation. But if they lose one of the rare prolific power hitters in their star-crossed history, then what have they gained? John Heyman asked. From the outside looking in, it seems as though Alonso is holding out for the Mets. And on the Mets end, they have pivoted with other moves, but why would they rush to bring in another first baseman before Alonso makes a decision? Right now, it's clear that Alonso doesn't have the offers he's looking for, and other teams are far and few between. As long as that remains the case, there's still a chance that he could return to Queens, New York. As reported by Mets on SN or on Sports Illustrated, the Mets have considered trades for Ryan Mountcastle of the Baltimore Orioles and Spencer Torkelson of the Detroit Tigers. Both of those situations come with, risks. They both come with drawbacks. They both would cost, capital. Spencer Torkelson, you would think wouldn't cost you that much, but you heard the general manager of the Detroit Tigers wants two top 15 prospects. So, even if Brett Beatty is a top 15 prospect in the organization, then you would have to add on to that. In my opinion, right then and there, like the price is a little kind of too rich for me. I don't think Spencer Torkelson's right now value is worth two top prospects, two top 15 prospects in the organization. In fact, if you look at baseball trade values, Spencer Torkelson literally has no trade value. It's like 3. In comparison, Brett Beatty's is double, is like all close to 8. So just Brett Beatty alone technically would have more value. And Brett Beatty is the type of player I would be more interested in. I really would. Brett Beatty has an on base, he has shown a propensity to get on base a little more. Spencer Torkelson has had a little more propensity to strike out. That's not to say that, Spencer Torkelson has reached his ceiling. If you watched our video the other day, we read a scouting report of Spencer Torkelson 2.5 years ago. And they basically said he was an elite hitter, and he was an elite home run hitter where he can hit 30 home runs annually, 40 home runs on in his prime. But they also said he's going to be a routine all-star with MVP capabilities. He was a running back in high school / linebacker, so he has that athletic pedigree. So Spencer Torkelson does have untapped talent, supposedly. Do you want to go there if you're the Mets? Is there risk? Yes, there is risk. And if you're the Detroit Tigers or if you're the New York Mets and he hasn't cut it with a team like the Detroit Tigers, really, do you scratch your head? Do you say, hey, is there something there that we believe we can unlock? Or, if you can't cut it with the Tigers, like really, where can you cut it? Where can you cut it? Ryan Mountcastle is a little more intriguing to me, but I think there's still not enough. These options right now are not great. They are not great. Like in the past, I really wish that the Mets made a decision about a month ago or a month and a half ago that they weren't going to pursue Pete Alonso. Then they could have pursued other guys that I thought had more of a ceiling. Guys like Nathaniel Lowe, a guy who was traded from the Texas Rangers to the Nationals, a guy who, that's a guy who is great at taking pitches. He doesn't strike out as much. He really has a good eye at the plate. Guy has a lot of potential. That would be a guy that I would have pursued. Even like a Paul Goldsmith for a 1-year option. Maybe that's a guy you would have pursued for $11 million. I mean, there just would have been a whole different approach to this offseason. Going back to Nathaniel Lowe, he's a Gold Glove Award winner. He's a Silver Slugger. Every year, his on base is 356 career, so he's not a bad on base guy. He's a guy can pop you 20 home runs, 75 RBIs. He's a top 10 first baseman. He'll play Gold Glove defense. He'll have give you a chance for Silver Slugger. And he wouldn't have cost you that much. I'm not really liking the backup options. I'm not liking, Torkelson. I take a chance on him, but would I want to give 2 top 15 prospects? No, I take a chance on him if it's a bucket of balls you're giving up. If you're giving up Brett Beatty or less, not if you're giving up 2 prospects at the talent level of Brett Beatty. That's still a little too rich for me. Like it all depends on value, which value you're giving up in Torkelson. As long as you're not giving up a lot of value, I take a flyer on him. But would I want to give him the first base job all year? No, I more or less want to invite him to spring training and see if he can cut it and win a job here. I mean, he's not proven that he's necessarily better than a Ronnie Mauricio, than an Acuna, than a Brett Beatty even. So he'd have to earn that job. Ryan Mountcastle is a guy who is more proven. He's a guy who actually, if he comes in here, you probably, without a doubt, he wouldn't have to earn the job. I mean, he's a guy in the past who has put up 30 home runs. He's a guy that I think is a lot more solid of a hitter, hitting close to 270 in the last couple of years. The power hasn't been there, but he's been more of a complete hitter. And he's not making a lot of money. But is he, the solution? Is he really the solution? And I'm not saying he's the solution either. I mean, I'd rather go to a guy like Yandy Diaz. Yandy Diaz is a 33-year-old from he is from the Rays, and Yandy Diaz is a guy with more upside. He's more of a complete hitter. And if you look at his baseball savant, I mean, he is literally, his baseball savant numbers, in my opinion, are better than Pete Alonso. So if you want a short-term solution while you analyze Ryan Clifford, while you look at the market, how the market develops for Vladdy Guerrero Jr., while you possibly look at a Murakami overseas, a Yandy Diaz, I mean, I really like it. I mean, let me bring up his baseball savant because, in my opinion, that's very, very impressive. All right, so folks, I mean, if you look at the red, the darker the red, the more elite the stat. I mean, if you look at his 2024 baseball savant, his advanced stats, I mean, how could you not be impressed? His overall numbers, he had 621 at bats, 14 home runs, 281 batting average. Last year in 2023, he had a 330 batting average in 600 plate appearances. He had 932 OPS. This is a nice hitter. This is a very nice hitter. He's making $10 million into his last year contract, his last official contract. He's got a team option for 2026. But this is a guy, I don't think you would have to give up a lot for, but he's got a very high ceiling. WOBA is expected WOBA 73rd percentile, expected batting average 88, expected slug 65, expected exit velocity 92nd percentile, 92.2 miles per hour is that expected exit velocity. The guy hits the ball hard, barrels it up at 48%. That's probably one of his only few stats under 50%. 89% hard hit rate, 4% sweet spot, 73% bat speed, 93% squared up, 88% chase, 97% whip. This guy doesn't strike out a lot, 86% K rate, and the walk rate has been better in the past, but it's still over 50%. If I go back to 2023, the numbers get even better, but nothing's better than 2022 is actually similar to 2023. But 2023, he had a phenomenal year. Everything is almost close to 90%. I mean, this is a guy that I like to take a flyer at if they don't figure out the Alonso thing. But regardless, this video is about Alonso, is about the Alonso situation. And this is about the Alonso situation. And I frankly think Pete Alonso has seen reality. The Mets are 100% dead serious. They are out. They are out, and they are seriously contemplating other options. And I think he probably spoke to his wife, spoke to his agent, saying, do we really want to move to Toronto? Do we really want to move across the country and play for the Angels? Is that my best situation? Even if Toronto comes up with 5 or 10 extra $1 million, right? Is that going to put me in my best position to secure a better contract for the future. If I give up $5 million and play for the Mets, will that put me in a better position to earn more money in the future? And I think, yes, you want to be in a lineup where you can win, where you're comfortable. If you put yourself in the playoffs, look, LA Angels, Toronto Blue Jays, he won't have an opportunity to do damage in the playoffs. He won't have an opportunity to raise his stock. Imagine Pete Alonso never getting to the playoffs in 2024. He might have been a goner long ago. So I think the Mets just give him so much more opportunity. It's not even funny. It's not even a debate. Really, you hear Pete Alonso now, through the mouth of John Heyman, it sounds like there actually is desperation from the polar bear, and he's raising his hand saying, you know what, please, Steve Cohen, David Stearns, before you make that decision, really come back one more time to the table and let's get serious. And I think that outburst, or that interjection, that honest talk to the crowd, where the crowd was booing David Stearns when he was discussing backup Pete Alonso option, I think, you know what, that might work out as one of the best negotiation tactics of all time. And I'm not saying it was done at the time to be a negotiation tactic, but at the end of the day, that transparent honesty, him speaking directly to the fans, and where Alonso could actually see their reaction, he actually saw how the Mets could sell Pete Alonso leaving. I mean, he was probably also saying, hey, you know what, Scott, we could put pressure on the Mets because he knows that the Mets fans want him back. But he saw in real time, folks, in real time, how Steve Cohen and the New York Mets could put their spin on it, whether it be right or wrong. And I'm tending more to lean where, I'm leaning more on the Steve Cohen side. He saw in literally a span of 2 minutes where he could turn angry fans who want Pete Alonso, who will run through a fence for Pete Alonso, in 2 minutes. Steve Cohen gives his reasoning, and now those same fans are cheering for the response of Steve Cohen. And you know what? That is extremely telling. Because at the end of the day, New York fans want to know one thing. Are you trying your best? And number two, they want to know, does the player want to play here? And Steve Cohen showed in that 2-minute retort that, number one, the Mets are trying. They really are. They're putting their foot forward. And number two, there was no indication that Pete Alonso even wanted to come back. So the opinion of the fans was able to change so drastically. And, give credit to Steve Cohen. He's a great speaker. He's a great businessman, and he's great at reading the room. And he was able to do something pretty special in those couple minutes. And it turns out that maybe those words could lead to a final resolution in the Pete Alonso saga. Wouldn't that be amazing? Wouldn't that be special? And I asked everybody in our last video, what would you grade the New York Mets? And I was around a B+. A lot of people gave their grades, but they also gave grades if the Mets would sign Alonso. Now I'll ask you this. Since it looks like there could be a potential reunion with the Mets and Alonso, what would you upgrade your final grade to? If the Mets sign Alonso, and think about that too. Like I would grade it like this. Not only did they sign Alonso, but they pair Alonso with Soto. That is important. I'm really starting to like this offseason. Is it perfect? No. And then you also hear that the Mets are continuing to look at the bullpen situation. They are continuing to look at other options to improve the bullpen. The recent name today that you heard was Tim Hill, and Tim Hill was a very viable lefty option. He had some great moments, and that, if that's true, and the Mets are truly going in that direction, whether they're truly going in that direction, it's a nice option, but it really shows you that the Mets aren't really, they're not settling. They're really not settling. And I like that because bullpen arms throughout the course of the season is hard to acquire. It's hard to acquire a good bullpen arm once the season starts. So get as many good, viable bullpen arms before the season starts. So, we could end up like this. We could end up getting two great backs, bringing back the lineup, a couple good bullpen additions. Sean Manaea coming back to the rotation. Clay Holmes, I think that move has a lot of upside. Frankie Montas replacing Luis Severino, and another year of that pitching lab getting to work. And we have seen the success from that pitching lab in year one. So it's exciting to see how year two results, yield. All right, so let's get to some comments, folks. So we're gonna do a new thing at the end of the video or towards the end of the video. We'll change things up. We'll do a little formatting. So let's look at some of the comments at my last video. And again, I gotta say the comments are great. They are really really great. So I'm gonna actually go through them right now and find some comments for you. Okay, so I found a couple comments, and I want to go some pro Mets management, so pro Stearns, pro Steve Cohen, and I want to get your comment that's actually not happy with the situation. So stay tuned. So the first comment, um, there's a lot of pro Stearns comments. I'll say that there's a lot of pro Stearns, a lot of pro Cohen. The last video kind of showed Scott Boras on the ropes. It said desperate. So I mean this, today, and then literally the next day, now you hear Alonso potentially wants to come back, and the Mets are re-engaging. So yesterday's video about Boras being desperate was 100% spot on. His response, his retort Saturday night screamed at desperation. I said he was speaking in legalese. I mean, he wasn't speaking from the heart. So whether he's true or not, it doesn't come off well. And if, somebody brought up a guy like David Sampson, he is the former general manager of the Marlins, and he's a guy who's had many, many dealings with Scott Boras. And he's basically a guy who says that, Scott Boras is a guy who comes at you with a bag of tricks. And to take what he says with a grain of salt. And that's a guy who's been in the room with Scott Boras. So take that for what it will. And, when you sign on with a guy like Boras, that is what, even though he may get you that biggest bag, that also comes along as baggage. So if you're Pete Alonso and you're not the best superstar, you may have to think twice before signing with a guy like Boras. Too late now. Too late now. All right, so let's look at these comments. I know. Let me get to it. All right, so we'll go to first. And this one comes from Marcus. I give the offseason grade a B+. Same grade I gave. As far as Pete Alonso and Greedy Scott go, I think the Mets will still sign Pete, but the situation will drag on into spring training. Kudos to Steve Cohen for his brutal honesty to the public, media, and the baseball world. The Mets, if nothing else, have control of the narrative, if you will. If Mets land a legitimate big-time starting pitcher during this offseason, I'll raise the grade to an A. So I think I would say the most important thing, a couple of things you wrote here, Marcus, very, very astute, very knowledgeable. And this is why I say, I always defer to you guys because you guys have a lot of great knowledge. So the grade B+, that's the grade I gave. But you said having control of the narrative. And I think that's what the Mets did on Saturday. That's what the Mets did wholeheartedly. Because you have a man in Steve Cohen, whether you believe him or not, it appeared like he was speaking from the heart. It appeared like he was being truthful. So, more often than not, a guy who comes off like Steve Cohen did, a guy who in that moment showed more transparency than 99% of every other MLB owner. That is special. That is rare. If there was, a points matchup, Boras responding at night, Steve Cohen in the middle of the day, Steve Cohen won that exchange by a mile. by a mile. So he won the day on Saturday, but not only that, again, he took control of the narrative. He was more believable. He appeared to be more honest. Uh, Boris's response came in legal knees, in legalities. Just really, the ask I was asking for was similar, or not similar, was basically the same thing that he asked with other contracts. It was very standard, which it wasn't. It appeared like he was asking for an opt out, and in that opt out, the player, Pete Alonso, would be getting money, $5 million, $2 million, whatever. I think somebody mentioned, oh, Cody Bellinger had that. Okay, that's not normal if one person in whole Major League Baseball history had that. That would be an outlier. That would be an anomaly. So Pete Alonso asked for that. That would not be a normal standard ask. And I would understand why the Mets would be hesitant. So again, you are 100% right, Marcus. What the Mets did do was gain control of the narrative. And again, I also agree that if the Mets add another front end starting pitcher, you say a legitimate big time starting pitcher, it would up the grade to an A. And yeah, I mean, like it sounds like the Mets have a good chance to get Pete Alonso, and if they got that reliever, plus looks like they're trying to get bullpen options. This offseason is not looking that bad at all. And I still say that this is one of our best, if not the best, offseason in our entire history. And despite that, we did get the best player in this offseason. Okay, so let's go more. Let's go more. And remember, we are going to get to a negative comment as well. I see one. Um, um, Wilfredo Torres writes, "Hi, dominant Mets Nation. Steve and David have an excellent job putting together the best possible team. This is only the beginning, and things should get better. The fans must remember this team has only been under Steve for 5 years. The transition takes time to bring in the right people to do this work, but it will only work with patience and time. The Mets will have a championship soon." So I mean that's hopefully they will. But again, I think that's again, you hit your point was it takes time. Again, the Mets have only completed 4 seasons under Steve Cohen, making the playoffs in 2022 and last year, going 2 games shy of the World Series, winning 101 games in 2022. So the Mets have had some success and some great success under Steve Cohen, but it's been a very, very short period of time. It's taken Steve Cohen 3 years for him to get David Stearns, and David Stearns has only been in this position for 16 months. So again, great, astute point. It's going to take time. Success and building a team building does not take like that. And if you want to do it right, if you want to throw money at everyone, anyone and anyone, then you see what can happen. You'll have some success in 2022, but it'll fold like a stack of cards in 2023 if you do not build it right. Plus, you'll have lingering money that you carry on the books, like the Mets did in 2024, if the Mets are not built right. Okay, so more questions. Another one, Gary Stang, Gary GT writes, "I have no issues with how Cohen Stearns is managing the team. It's a breath of fresh air to finally have competent adults." Okay, so that's another pro Cohen Stearns. I want to get to that one that I promised you. Okay, so this is the one that I promised you that was not so much pro Stearns, pro Cohen. Okay, and this is by Gerald. So Gerald, thank you for writing this. So Gerald writes, "Mets fans assumed the 2025 payroll would be over 400 million. So they are thrilled at the Soto signing. Then it turned out the Mets want to be under the Cohen tax threshold. So they basically put at their eggs in one basket. So all their eggs in one basket, I assume. I don't mind that so much with position players because we have so many promising prospects to try to fill these voids. But we don't have that much strength in pitching prospects. So Stearns went dumpster diving again. It's not going to work 2 years in a row any more than a long shot bet at the track will win 2 weeks in a row. I can't see this staff making the postseason. season. Okay, so Gerald is, very concerned with the pitching, and I could see that. So what I would say this, like I want to address first what you said. So Mets fans assume the 2025 payroll will be over 400 million. I mean, I'm not sure why we would assume that. I know an SI article, and I actually did a little research on this. An SI article back in October said that the Mets would be spending a historic amount this offseason. But that was rumors and speculation. There was no guarantee the Mets were going to spend over 400 million. 400 million. Then it turned out the Mets want to be under the Cohen tax threshold. That I don't think has been confirmed either. I mean, the Mets right now are at about 295 million. It looks like they want to sign Alonso. It looks like they want to sign another extra reliever. If they would do that without shedding any payroll, they would be well over the Steve Cohen tax threshold. So that, we have to, that's yet to be seen. And then, your last gripe would be dumpster diving when it came to pitching. Well, we were signed Sean Manaea, right? So if we didn't re-sign Sean Manaea, we would have to get another front end guy. So we got a front end guy in Manaea, right? So we did spend money there. We also have Senga coming back. So, that is to be taken into the equation. Would you like to have 2, 3, 4, 5, ace-like options? Yes, but, how much are you willing to pay in capital? How much are you willing to pay on the market? Like a guy I'd be willing to take a flyer on right now because I think you can get him at a value price is a Jack Flaherty. People seem to be worried that he's had some back issues. He's had some things to worry about. I would take a value option on him. But I would say that, it's a little more than a long shot bet for this pitching rotation because you have Senga, who's had Cy Young potential, Sean Manaea, Cy Young potential. Clay Holmes has been a top reliever. Then Peterson coming back. He looked good last year. He was successful under the pitching lab. I gotta say, give this pitching lab a chance to fail. Right before we go nuts, before we start investing godly amounts of money in the pitching staff. We also do have a couple guys like Brandon Sprout, Blade Tidwell, Jonah Tong coming up in the near future. So, let's look at the depth. Let's look at the pitching lab. Let's see how things work out. Right now, we have a 6-7 man rotation with deep options like Griffin Canning, Paul Blackburn, McGill, Peterson, Clay Holmes, Montaz. The options aren't all flashy. They're certainly not, but we do have some top end talent. Not Montaz. Senga and Manaea, those are your top end pitchers right there. Clay Holmes is your wild card. Hopefully he can slot in for a nice number 3. Peterson, if he continues to grow, he pitched really well last year. Really well. In fact, people are very upset that he didn't pitch more in the playoffs. They felt that could have been a difference maker. So I would say this, let's see the pitchers fail. Let's see this pitching staff fails. And if the pitching staff doesn't look good in the first couple of months, I expect Stearns to shift. I really do. Maybe it won't be the most opportune time. Maybe the pitching prices will have gone up. But, we have a lot of depth in the pitching. And let's just wait for the pitching to fail because last year there was a lot of success from the pitching lab. And, when you see the dumpster diving words, you got to remember, David Stearns has had a lot of success with these players who aren't prototypical all-stars, Cy Young Award candidates, putting them in this pitching lab system and them producing results. Another guy, right off the top of my head, Phil Maton. Ryan Stanek looked a lot better as the year would go on. The longer these guys are in the system, the longer they're exposed to the pitching lab, the better they do. Quintana, from August 25th on, the guy was lights out. Give them a little time, Gerald. I'm with you. I want the team to be good right away. I really do. And a lot of the comments I gotta say were pro Cohen. As far as the grades, a couple people gave a lot of the people gave B's, a couple A's, minuses. One person, Noel, gave it a C. I was a little harsh grading, but Alan Desgrange. I apologize for screwing up your name. C plus, C plus compared to other teams. Dodgers A plus. How can anyone give the Mets an A? Nope, average at best. Imagine they didn't sign Soto. It would be a major fail. I mean, you can't imagine they didn't sign Soto. They invested $800 million and they invested all that time to pursue the guy. You got to give them credit where credit's due. You can't give the team a C plus when they got Juan Soto. I mean, I think you're being a little tough. You're comparing that to the Dodgers, but the Dodgers right now aren't the Mets. I mean, I said compare this to the Mets history. You can only compare yourself to yourself. If you're going to get better and you're comparing yourself to every other situation, which is different, the Dodgers have been building for 15 years or 12 years, whenever they sold their ownership. They have different resources. They have a different team. They have a different setup. You got to compare yourself to yourself. And if this year is your best offseason this year and next year is your best offseason next year and you keep building like that and taking steps, you're going to go places. You got to build it the right way. And you know, you can't grade the season. Imagine they didn't sign Soto. They signed Juan Soto. I was looking at the comments the other day, the videos that we signed Juan Soto. Everybody was ecstatic. Everybody was thanking Uncle Stevie. And now, just 6 weeks later, everybody's pretending like, no big deal. We got Juan Soto. No big deal. I mean, go ask Yankee fans this year. I mean, they're trying to cope, but ask them how little of a deal it is because it is a huge deal that Juan Soto is not on their team. So, folks, we are going to end off here. Remember to drop your comment. We're going to do the same thing at the end of the video. We are going to go over your comments. Let me know anything, how you feel about the Alonso saga, how it potentially could end. You know, again, subscribe. We are trying to grow the channel. I think we're growing great. Thanks to you. All right, folks, have a great night, and I will speak to you all very soon.